Hello everyone and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into an idea that is the absolute bedrock of any democracy: power sharing. We're going to figure out what it really means, why it's so incredibly important, and see what happens when countries get it right and when they get it very, very wrong.
You know that feeling, right? It's Sunday evening, Dad wants the news, Mom wants her cereal, and you're desperate to watch the cricket match. That little battle for control over one remote? Well, just scale that up. Imagine that same struggle, but on a national level, with much higher stakes. That, in a nutshell, is politics. It's different groups all wanting control. And how a democracy handles that fight, that's where power sharing comes in.
Okay, before we get into our stories, there's a key term from your NCERT textbook that we've got to understand perfectly. And that word is ethnic. Now, this just means a group of people who feel connected to each other through a shared culture, maybe a common language, or the belief that they have the same ancestors. It's not about religion or nationality. So keep this definition in your head, because it's the key to understanding the two very different tales we're about to hear.
Right, so to really get a handle on power sharing, we're going to look at the real-life stories of two countries, Belgium and Sri Lanka.
Now, if you look at them on a map, you might think they have a lot in common. Both are pretty small countries, about the size of our state of Haryana. And both had to deal with the same big challenge: different ethnic groups living together. But, as we're about to see, the paths they chose to walk were completely opposite.
So first up, let's head to Belgium. Now, its ethnic mix is a little complicated, so pay close attention. Across the whole country, the Dutch speakers are the majority, making up 59% of the population. The French speakers are at 40%. But, and this is a huge but, if you look at the capital city, Brussels, the whole picture flips on its head. In Brussels, 80% of the people speak French and only 20% speak Dutch. So get this, the group that's the majority in the country is actually a tiny minority in the capital. You can just imagine the tension that would create.
Okay, now let's jump over to Sri Lanka. Here, things were a lot more clear-cut. There's one massive majority group, the Sinhala speakers, who make up 74% of the population. The biggest minority are the Tamil speakers, at 18%. So the stage was set, and the big question was, with such a clear majority, how would the Sinhala community choose to use its power? Well, Sri Lanka chose a path called Majoritarianism. It's a belief that basically says, we are the majority, so we get to run the country however we want. And the needs and wants of the minority, they don't really matter.
And this idea had absolutely devastating consequences. In 1956, they passed an act making Sinhala the only official language, completely ignoring the Tamil language. Then, the government started favoring Sinhala applicants for university spots and government jobs. All of this made the Tamil people feel like strangers in their own country. Their requests for equality were just ignored. And this feeling of alienation grew and grew, eventually leading to demands for a separate state and then a tragic, terrible civil war that tore the country apart for decades.
Now, in complete contrast, let's go back to Belgium. The leaders there saw similar tensions brewing, but they chose a totally different, really creative path. Between 1970 and 1993, they changed their constitution not once, but 4 times to create a system where everyone felt included. They made sure the central government had an equal number of Dutch and French-speaking ministers. They gave a lot of power to the state governments. Brussels got its own special government where both groups had equal say, and they even created a whole new type of government, a community government, just to handle things like culture and education.
The difference couldn't be more stark, could it? Belgium chose to accommodate everyone, to share power, and that brought them peace and unity. In fact, their system is so respected that Brussels became the headquarters for the European Union. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, chose the path of majoritarianism, where one group forced its will on another. And that path tragically led to division, conflict, and a brutal civil war.
So these two stories are powerful lessons, right? They really bring us to the main question. Why is sharing power so important in the first place? Well, there are 2 main sets of reasons for it.
First, you've got what are called prudential reasons. Think of prudential as just being smart and practical. Sharing power is a good idea because it reduces the chance of conflict. It keeps the country stable. It's simply the sensible thing to do. But then there's a deeper reason, the moral reason. This one says that power sharing is the very spirit, the soul of democracy. In a democracy, the people are the ultimate source of power, and so they have a fundamental right to have a say in how they're governed.
Okay, so we've covered the why. We know why power sharing is a good thing, but how does it actually work in the real world?
Let's break down the different ways power is shared in modern democracies.
So the first way is what we call horizontal distribution. Imagine a straight, flat line. Power is shared among different parts of the government that are all on that same level. And these parts are the legislature, the people who make the laws, like our parliament. Then you have the executive, the ones who actually carry out the laws. And finally, the judiciary, our courts, who act as the referee and interpret the laws. The main thing here is that none of them is the boss of the others.
This setup creates a brilliant system of checks and balances. Basically, each branch keeps an eye on the other two. For example, the judges can declare a law made by the legislature to be unconstitutional. This makes sure that no one part of the government can get too powerful and just do whatever it wants.
All right, the second form is vertical distribution, which you might also know as federalism. If the last one was a flat line, think of this one as a ladder, power shared between governments at different levels. We see this very clearly in India, right? You have the central government for the whole country, then you have our state governments, and then you have local governments like the municipalities and panchayats.
Third, power can also be shared among different social groups. We've already seen the perfect example of this. Remember that community government in Belgium? It was designed to give different language groups a say. In India, our system of reserved constituencies for scheduled castes and tribes does something similar. It's a way to make sure that historically disadvantaged groups get a fair voice in our democracy.
And finally, the fourth form of power sharing is among political parties and pressure groups. You see this all the time when no single party gets a majority in an election, and they have to form a coalition government with other parties. But it's not just about parties. Interest groups, like business associations, farmers' unions, trade unions, they all influence government policy. That's also a kind of power sharing. So when you look at the whole picture, from the stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka to all the different ways it's done, one thing becomes absolutely clear. Power sharing isn't a sign of weakness. It's the very heart, the very spirit of a strong and healthy democracy.
But I want to leave you with one last question to think about. We've seen that sharing power is great for keeping peace and unity. But does it have a downside? If you have to consult with so many different groups, does it make it really slow to get things done? Is being a little less efficient the price we have to pay for a more inclusive democracy? What do you think? Drop your thoughts below. Thanks for watching.